So Stavros Halkias, aka Stavi Baby, has been making a podcast rounds while promoting his new special. Quick little promos coming out September 8th and it's called Uncle Stav. Look at me promoting a millionaire. How pathetic. Anyways, in these podcasts, Stavros has been doing what he does best. Keeping it real, aka keeping it Greek.
A lot of stand-up comics happened the last couple years to have some of the dumbest opinions on earth, and they are my friends. And I'm like, all right, guys, can we fucking talk about this?
Because you get the comedian pass. Like they have no, doubt that you're like pro censorship. Like you like an offensive joke as much as the next guy.
I am, yes.
And I think that allows you to be an acceptable vessel for the like, wait a minute, political conversations, because I think, especially for comedians, the main thing that they were responding to, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong, is that people were trying to silence them.
Yes, and that's so I mean, it's so clear they were fucking wrong. Like that's the hardest part. Is like, guys, even if that was true, you can't think of a different word. Like that's another thing that pisses me off. We were just talking about it. It's good to have restrictions.
Right.
Like if a lot of the people complaining were shitty at stand-up. That's the thing that was tough. It's like, dude, I know you haven't tried hard to make this joke work. Try to make it work without it. Just for fucking 3 months, try to make it work without a slur, right? And it's like, oh, who cares if you couldn't say it? Like, you're not martyrs. Lenny Bruce actually went to fucking jail for this shit. You know what I mean? Like we want to pretend we have victim. Like it's so funny because a lot of times it was so hypocritical because these are people who are like, oh, that guy's being a victim or whatever. It's like, that's the biggest victim mentality of all time. I can't say a couple slurs and now.
Much respect to Stav, dude. Yeah, he's my favorite comic. He's also from Maryland. I'm from Maryland. Maryland boys stand up. But, I have a take here. Correct me if I'm wrong here, please. Stav is the only one in the Rogan sphere who outright criticizes the overall comedic structure, the cultish behavior surrounding Joe Rogan. Like, Dan Soder does this. And I actually do like Dan Soder. He's a good dude. But, he doesn't do it as often as Stavros does. Joe List does this as well, but he's very subtle with his jabs. John Marco Soresi, a.k.a. Vegan Wolvie, he does this, and he's been making the rounds the past year or so, criticizing the Rogan sphere, but he was never outright a Rogan sphere comic. I feel like he's having his own scene in New York, He's never been directly correlated to Joe Rogan. Stavros has been on the Joe Rogan Experience multiple times. I definitely see other comics here and there, doing subtle jabs. It's always subtle jabs with these guys. It's always subtle jabs with these free speech warriors. It really is. They're never outright. They're so scared to step on the ego of the big toe, aka Joe Rogan. How ironic that these free speech warriors like Andrew Schultz, are always the one to play the victim card whenever you point the sword of accountability at them. Which one is it? Are you a free speech warrior or a warrior? Or are you a coward? Are you a man who's capable of actually taking accountability for their own actions? Or are you a coward? I have heard nothing from Andrew Schultz and Theo Von regarding stuff like this. Trump vowed to bring free speech back, yet judges in 75 cases ruled that he has stifled it. It goes on to say here, since then, a wave of court rulings has concluded his administration has done the complete opposite. Routers identified 75 federal judge rulings finding that Trump's government infringed on First Amendment rights, including freedom of speech, religion, and the press. Do you hear that? Crickets. I have heard not a peep from Andrew Schultz, Theo Von, and the rest of these dorks. Also, I hate this comedian pass. This is the thing that really drives me freaking insane. This comedian pass, I'm a comic, bro. Look at me being edgy. Look at me edging this freaking stool. I'm a comic, bro. But you just said something extremely xenophobic that can actually influence the young, feeble mind of a teenager. Oh, bro, I'm just being a comic, bro. Don't worry about it, bro. What, you trying to suppress me, bro? You want to know what a comedian pass is? It's just a coward's excuse to avoid accountability. That's what it is. The second someone says something offensive or crosses a line, these comics hide behind I'm a comedian, bro, as if that automatically makes them immune to criticism. Also, regarding what Stav said, the quote-unquote cheap comedy phase right now, especially what resides in Austin, Texas, I mean, that is the Tony Hinchcliffe crowd to a T. You could be up there on Kill Tony, just completely bombing, but you drop the F word. Just drop it one time, and one time only. You will get a round of applause from all those freaking SEALs that reside in Austin, Texas, dude. These comics are no longer comics. They're no longer funny. You know, they're just looking for approval from the audience. That's it. I don't hear any punchlines anymore, dude. I really don't. Growing up, I was a big comic fan. I have literally a poster of Mitch Hedberg right here. I got Norm Macdonald right here, Richard Pryor, amongst others, you know, and nowadays, all these comics resort to is just the F-word slang, you know, the N-word. That's the punchline nowadays. That's it. I sound like a boomer just complaining about these young kids. I'm only 33, dude. I'm not a boomer. But yeah, shout out to Stav. I'm going to show you 2 more clips from this podcast that I figured I should share with you guys. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I truly appreciate it. Here's the next clip.
You were one of the comedians who came out and said, I'm not going to perform in Saudi Arabia. Last year, the Riyadh Comedy Festival offered what I can only assume was boatloads of money to
it was a lot of money,
a bunch of your peers.
Yeah.
And you said no. When you see people who not only went and took the money, whether it's Dave Chappelle or Louis C.K., you know, titans of the field, not only did Dave Chappelle take the money, but he made jokes about it in his next special.
I'll take money from Saudi Arabia any day, just so I can say no over here. It feels good to be free.
Does that make you doubt yourself at all? Like, are you ever like,
no.
I could have just taken it and no one would have been mad?
No, fuck no. Taking the money, I kind of understood. And not understood, but I could see a way where these people that don't really think about, you know, they get a lot of these. And look, let's be honest, when you're at the top, you think that's the most evil place some of these guys have performed? You don't think they've done fucking private corporate events for fucking Northrop Grumman or some shit? But they, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't want to support a country that has sort of a religious caste system, which Saudi Arabia, or a caste system in general, right? Saudi Arabia has it. You could argue Israel has it. They do, right? You have different rights as a Palestinian than you do as a Jewish, citizen of Israel. This Saudi Arabia is not. They don't have a caste system. Are we out of our fucking minds? They don't let their fucking maids have their passports. Like, that's an evil society. I mean, you know, it's like, to me, it's like, okay, you're against one type of evil. You can't just do the other guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, like, to me, that was such a hollow argument. It's like, these are not, don't do either. Like, that's the thing. It's like, don't do either of these things. I'm fucking amped about this shit. Dave Chappelle is the GOAT. Like, Chappelle's show, especially his first 2 specials, and he can have any opinion he wants. But I do think, and in general, it's not just Chappelle, it is the guys at the very top that take these like Gabriel Iglesias said a similar thing where about the money, and it's like, you guys got enough fucking money.
It definitely was culture washing. You know, Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr. Oh, Bill Burr, what the fuck, dude? What the hell? Here's a question. How much money do you really need? You're a full-fledged millionaire. You know, you're fine. You still got an audience and you can still tour in the United States. What the fuck do you need to go to Saudi Arabia for this blood money? And regarding Chappelle, and this is the thing that really killed me with him, because growing up, Chappelle was my favorite comic. And he's still a legend, but this definitely is a stain on his resume, in my opinion. Chappelle pretty much made his brand, his overall public identity, around challenging censorship, you know, defending free expression, and refusing to let institutions tell him what to say or what not to say. But instead, what does he do? He goes to the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which was sponsored by the Saudi Arabia government, in an attempt to whitewash them from all the human rights violations that they've been doing for a while, including freedom of speech, which these free speech warriors really care about. And I have this article right here from the Human Rights Watch, just to remind everyone what the overall implications were heading into this comedy festival. And this, according to Human Rights Watch, this comedy festival was used to deflect attention from its brutal repression of free speech and other pervasive human rights violations. The festival dates included the 7th anniversary of the Saudi state-sponsored murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and these mofos still went, and takes place just months after Saudi authorities executed a journalist apparently for his public speech. Participating comedians, to avoid contributing to laundering the Saudi government's reputation, should use the comedy festival to publicly urge Saudi authorities to free unjustly detained Saudi dissidents, journalists, and human rights activists. The festival lineup includes guys like freaking Aziz, Hannibal Buress, Bill Burr, Jimmy Carr, Dave Chappelle, all these freaking douche faces. And I want to read this right here to you guys because, it's very relevant. On June 14th, from the same article, by the way, the Saudi government executed Turki Al Jazeera, a prominent Saudi writer and journalist, for various terrorist crimes, quote unquote. The government has released a few details about his detention, trial, and execution, and it appears that he faced capital punishment because of his peaceful speech and commentary. So you see how hypocritical these comics are? They all went to Saudi Arabia and they stood silent. They were paid. They paid to keep their mouth shut. They were mute. They were silenced. These free speech warriors, literally, these free speech warriors were given tape, and they themselves taped their lips shut as long as they got the bag. But then they come back here and they have the audacity to bitch and whine. Oh, my free speech is being limited here. My free speech is being limited there. Comics are low-life scumbags. And those aren't my words. That's their words verbatim. If you were a podcast head like I was in the early 2020s, every single podcast, guys like Tim Dillon, Joe Rogan, every single comic that went on a Joe Rogan Experience, every single one of them would brag of how comics can't be trusted, how they would eat each other alive just to get a stand-up set at a comedy club. They would openly brag about it. They thought it was cool. I don't know what the fuck they did, but they did. And now in 2026, I'm just like, no, they were telling the truth the entire time. They really are scumbags.
Comedians, as sort of the canary in the coal mine, undo that thinking that it's actually punk to be right-leaning.
Nobody believes that. That's the thing. It's nobody fucking believes
People
that.
say
2024 in the run up to that election, you saw how the right was activating or maybe in some cases weaponizing comedy in the podcast space.
Yeah.
Were you having behind the scenes conversations with those folks about what was happening? And did you at all feel like you have to issue some kind of corrective in what you're doing?
I do kind of resent it because I do feel like a lot of my contemporaries have forced me to be explicitly political.
Yep.
Some people thought their platform was important enough to host either the president of the United States, the vice president, whatever, and they want to do a public service. And I think that was naive. You're either naive, which some people I think were, or you're so arrogant that you think that's true.
Yeah.
This will get clicks, or some people they thought culture was going to go to the right, and they're like, I want to
get out in front.
And by the way, I do think it did feel that way.
Yeah,
for
sure.
And I do think if the Trump administration hadn't gone full blown fascist right out of the gate, if ICE wasn't murdering people, and if they didn't like immediately kind of, it was the first year of the Trump administration did feel kind of insane, right? I think a lot of people, I think that is the way things would have gone. Sure.
It's punk to be right-leaning. Could you imagine Iggy Pop and the Ramones worrying about, traditional family values and religious beliefs? Right-leaning and punk. That's the complete opposite. That's a complete 180 right there. Stavros said in that clip, some people thought that their podcast was important enough. They think that they were doing a public service. And here's a take here. Let me know if I'm wrong here in the comment section. I think Theo Von and Andrew Schultz were not keenly aware of the influence that their podcast with Donald Trump had, especially Theo Von. I think Theo Von legitimately thought that he was going to be doing a podcast, presidential candidate, and in his book, it was cool. I'm not trying to excuse Theo Von. No, I'm not. Trust me, I'm very critical of Theo Von in this channel. I believe Theo Von did this to cater to his own audience. Most of his audience are right-leaning or right-wing audience. Most importantly, I think he just thought it was cool. I think he went home and was just like, yeah, man, I just interviewed the possible president of the United States. We talked about crack cocaine and owls, Theo Von and Andrew Schultz, just useful idiots. But I thoroughly believe that Joe Rogan, aka the Big Toe, he genuinely believed that him endorsing Donald Trump and him platforming and humanizing Donald Trump would be a service to the public. See, that's how big his ego is. I think Joe Rogan did it with the intention that he was doing a public service with this podcast. He was just like, oh, yeah, man, I'm going to help everybody get to the bottom of this. Yeah, man, only I can do this. You know, only I can, you know, actually come to the truth. At the time, and even until now, Joe Rogan definitely believed that Donald Trump was the better option between him and Kamala Harris. He still does. I'm not trying to give Theo Von an excuse, though. Trust me, I'm not. Trust me, I am not. I just believe Theo Von is just completely unaware of his surroundings. I think Theo Von is a grown man who's being pampered by everyone around him. This man is 46 years old and still being treated like he's like 20. Lastly, I agree with Stav here when he said that, you know, it's scary to think just how Trump and his goons, if they didn't fumble the bag or the ball in the first year of their admin, as expected, like how the culture would have continued leaning right. But the first year of the Trump admin last year was just so historically dangerous, so historically vile. And it's scary to think that if Trump didn't go to those measures with his fascism, that he probably would have been able to maintain this, you know, right-leaning culture that was cultivated in around like 2023, 2024. And God knows what else would the Republicans would have been able to do with this overall power that they have right now. Anyways, I'm done, dude. I got to go to sleep. Let me know what y'all think. Definitely agree with Stav with everything he said here in this podcast. Shout out to Stav. I do wonder, is Stav going to reappear on a Joe Rogan Experience in his overall podcast tour? It has me thinking. You know what I mean? The last time he's been on the Rogan Experience was in 2024. So we'll see if he actually does make a pit stop in Austin, Texas. He probably, I don't know. I feel like he's definitely aware that if he does, his own fan base will, I wouldn't say turn on him, but he'll definitely receive some sort of Greek backlash. We'll see. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I truly appreciate it. Till next video. Peace, y'all.